Welcome to the Proven Principles Podcast, the show that deconstructs the inner workings of the hospitality industry, breaking down the tools, tips, and tricks that the world's best-run hotels use every day. Here's your host, Adam Knight.
My guest today is Tony Matthews. He's the author of the Love Hate Hotels book series, creator of Love Hate Hotels across social media platforms, and founder of Love Hate Hotels, Inc., a hospitality headhunting, consulting, and influencing company. His illustrative writing style about his career in hospitality gives us a behind-the-scenes look at what it's like in the trenches of a hotel and why so many of us both love and hate the industry. On this episode, Tony discusses how he got his start and climbed the ladder in operations before moving into sales, the lessons he's learned through his journey, and his message to those just getting started in their career. So let's get to it. This is episode 26 of the Proven Principles Podcast. Tony Matthews on Love Hate Hotels and career development. Enjoy. Tony, man, great to see you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you give everyone a rundown about your background? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so actually went to college, West Virginia University, did what probably any not so smart college kid was, and went pretty generic with my major. Well, actually I started with engineering, got into, finished with business management. But, you know, obviously I'm not going to come out as a manager. So got into real estate, got my license there, and actually started working part-time at a hotel. While I was doing that, that way I could actually make some money until I sell something. And oddly enough, ended up enjoying the hotel I was working at, was able to get promoted pretty early on and kind of just rode the wave from there. You know, I hopped around probably more than most people do just because I was young, single, you know, had an opportunity to move down to Florida in the hot, you know, palm tree, sandy beach weather, and didn't have any reason not to do it. So I jumped ship, went to hotel, to this hotel, to this hotel, doing this job. Kind of covered quite a few positions in the guest services side of things, and eventually got into hotel sales, you know, doing group and catering sales for quite a few years there, inbound and outbound. And then ended up making a transition into hotel staffing with a couple different companies there. So that kind of was a different angle that I hadn't seen before, but still, you know, still technically the hotel business. Then ended up deciding I got to get the heck out of hotels, and end up back in hotels.
Not easy to do. I was going to say, like, most of us try, but we get sucked back in.
Exactly. So I ended up back in, but kind of it ended up actually turned into a learning lesson, and then kind of helped me actually write the sequel to my first book based on that. So it actually kind of benefited me in a way. And then now I'm still in the travel industry, but let's just say it's not quite in hotels anymore. Yeah,
still, it's like a spoke of the hub, whatever that analogy is. Yeah, exactly. You know, you accomplished something in writing the book, and I don't want to lead the witness too much here into this podcast, but maybe before I get to the question, for those of you that don't know you, can you give a little bit of a rundown of Love Hate Hotels? How did that come to be? You know, how did you? I mean, you're an author. That's crazy. It's huge.
Yeah, it was, you know, pretty, something that I had never in 100,000 years would have guessed I would have done is written a book. But it was kind of one of those where once I had gotten into hotel sales for a few years, I was in a different department, and I was still seeing a lot of the same things in quite a few of the other departments I had worked in previously. And like I said, I'd hopped around hotel to position to position, and it was the same thing at every hotel. You know, at one point you're at a hotel, you're like, you know what, I'm just at a bad hotel. You know, this manager's horrible, or these guests are just horrible because it's an old hotel or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I was going to another one, and it was like the same thing. You know, the same things would occur. The same guests come to that hotel too. You have the same maintenance issues or computer issues that you had at the hotel previously. So I learned pretty quickly that there's no such thing as a perfect hotel, new or old. And so I don't know if there was one particular thing that occurred that I could say that that's what made me start writing it. But I do remember it was a particular hotel where I was working in sales in Tampa, Florida. And I was like, man, I have to start writing this stuff down. I mean, there's just too many things, too many trends. And in talking with all the people that I met working in the hotel industry, everybody seemed to have that same kind of, man, I love hotels. I love, meeting new people every day. I love the weird hours. I love, just anything and everything about it. And then at the same time, people were trashing it, or man, I don't make enough money, or man, these hours that I thought were awesome are horrible because I can't go to my friend's wedding on the weekend because I got to work at the front desk, or why is this manager horrible, or just it was very much a love-hate, and I'm sure you could probably say that about any job ever, but it seemed to be so common with the hotel industry. At every hotel I went to, it was like, all right, like I'm going to start putting some of this to paper. Not only just that part of it, but just some of the experience that I went across, whether it was interactions with guests or interactions with employees. And one of the things I like to make clear with people is I'm a younger guy. I guess you could say younger, in my 30s, but I'm no general manager for 50 years, 80-year-old guy that's done every position in the hotel industry and could probably write a way better, more experienced book than me, and probably has way funnier, cooler stories that they've seen in hotels. I was your average hotelier, I guess, or hotel associate, however you want to term it, for just over 10 years, enough to get a taste of it and realize I either need to stay in this industry and love it or get out of it, because I didn't necessarily love it as much as I hated it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what happened. And then it took me a good 4 or 5 years to actually to get it to the final phase. And there were multiple times within the book where I was like, oh, okay, this is the ending. I mean, this is the perfect ending. I'm leaving this hotel. I'm going to this new fancy one. It'll be easy, and I'll just retire and sail off in the breeze. and no, I mean, that would be like the halfway point of the book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, so it ended up taking a good 4 or 5 years to actually get the book finished. But I think the first book ended exactly how I wanted it to end. So it was actually, and I had no intentions of writing a sequel book, because, not to necessarily spoil the book, but I didn't intend to have an extension of the first book. So when you get to the ending like that, my intent was not to have an extension. And it just so happened that I got enough new, I guess you would say, hotel material to do it all over again. Except this time, it didn't take me 4 years to do this one. This one was a little quicker, but it was kind of cool. It's kind of a cool switch, the second book, because it kind of took what I learned from the first one of my experience in hotels and kind of go from there. So whereas my first book was more a, kind of me growing from college all the way up to the point where I realized I got to get out of this industry. And then the second book kind of, okay, I got to do what I got to go do. This time I'm not going to mess around. I've been around the block a few times, like a little less critiquing. It's hard to explain without reading it, but it's a cool transition from the first book to the second book, and then how the second book ends, which will be the end of the series, kind of brings everybody up to speed with COVID. So
I see. So two book series.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So this isn't going to be like a hotel thing where you try to get out and it pulls you back in. There's no third book that's going to get you back into it.
I mean, if I ever somehow, by the grace of God, get back in there, there's going to be a lot of requirements that need to be met in order for me to be there. But if anything, there might be a book on some different angles of maybe helping people get back into the industry or the correct way to go, or different spin-offs, but definitely not my, I guess, memoir portion of the love hate in hotel industry. So
Yeah, it's such a great title too, how you came up with that. I mean, and it's so true. The sentiment of it is, it's true. I mean, I've been, I mean, me, 25 years in the industry, and thought about leaving countless times. But
right.
you always, something then happens that just, I don't know, gets that fire going again, and you want to stick it out, or to your point, you get a new job, you move to a new hotel, you meet a whole new group of
Yep.
people, and it just gives you that energy again. And that's what's so interesting about the industry. I've found is there's not a lot of jobs that you can get where you get paid to basically travel the world if you're open to going where the work is, and
Exactly.
living in places that people save up for maybe their entire lives to visit once. That's your home. And I think that's one of the things that always drew me to it, that kept me in it, is those maybe more personal experiences, not the paycheck experiences in the building.
Yep, that's what's the saying. It's everybody says we live where you vacation, but hospitality, it's we work where you vacation. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
that's if you're working in a hotel. Who knows? You could be in a little business district, small scale hotel, so that's
Right.
not necessarily the case. But the opportunity exists to go to that resort in Miami Beach or wherever. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you talk about in the book your start getting that job as a front desk agent, and kind of learning the ropes at the front desk. And I remember when I started as a pot washer. I was working the
wow.
the 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift, not the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. And I have this vivid memory of seeing the front desk people walk through the back of house going to their jobs, and all done up in their nice uniforms, and I'm in my scrubs basically, working in the kitchen. And I said, man, I want to do that job. I got to get to the front. How do you get to have a job like that?
Yeah.
And then I got there, and it wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Did it turn out to be that for you? Was it?
It's one of those where it's and you said it perfectly. It's the glorified position to work in the hotel, and I don't know if it's just a matter of, you said it too, the fancy suit, so you feel like you make a lot of money, you feel like you're important, but at the end of the day, you're probably making the same amount as the pot washer that you were making,
Yep.
just at the front desk, getting yelled at and dealing with, quite a few different tasks that should probably get you paid more, but not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and you know how it is at the desk. You have that sense of managing, and I had this business management degree. I'm like, oh, I'm managing the front desk by myself. I don't really have any managers eyeing me, sometimes, but for the most part, I was running the hotel with maybe the assistance of another front desk agent. So it just gives you that sense of being a leader without being a leader, and definitely without the pay of being a leader. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. You learn that pretty early on, I guess.
You totally do. Trial by fire out there, without
Yeah.
a doubt. What was the for people that are listening who may want to get to be a front desk agent or maybe a front desk manager? What was the thing that you learned in that job that you didn't expect, and maybe the thing that you learned in that job that carried you through your career up until where you are today? Did anything stick with you?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, you just have to be social. I mean, if you know hospitality, you know that for the most part, the people are pretty cool. They can get along with everybody. Obviously you're going to butt heads every now and again, but for the most part, you can spark a conversation with anybody. I don't know if it's necessarily for somebody that's an introvert. If so, then maybe accounting or revenue is for you. But, as far as front desk, I pretty much got the job by just being friendly. I hit it off with the sales manager at that first hotel, and she was the one actually put in the recommendation. And next thing you know, I'm working the front desk, and by me being cool with everybody at the hotel. I mean, I'm talking about the agents, the managers, the housekeepers, the engineers, everybody, don't leave anybody out. And, when it comes time for them to look for somebody to move up, they say, well, man, Tony gets along with everybody. Everybody loves Tony. He shows up on time. He doesn't mess around. And you never have to worry about, everybody getting sent to the wrong room or little things like that. And, and people will remember that. I mean, I'm thinking about a lot of the people that I've worked with in hotels, and some of the people were, the sharpest dressed, the best, very proper in the way they spoke, would never make a mistake necessarily as far as the computer systems and everything else. But that person might not have been as social and gotten along with everybody. And I think a lot of times they'll choose that person that does get along with the people, because at the end of the day, it's not only a people business, but you have to get along with not only the guests that are coming in the hotel, but the associates, because it's real easy. And I've been in hotels where, you have a lot of negative Nancy's, because it is a love hate. I mean, at the end of the day, it is what it is. You don't necessarily get paid as much as you probably should. Your hours are horrendous. So, as long as you can at least fake being positive while you're at work and getting along with people, even if you don't get along with them, at least, I think that carries a long way. And that's something that you're not necessarily going to learn in college or even hospitality school.
Right.
I think that's just kind of your upbringing, really. Just be a positive person, and it'll resonate in your promotions and things at work.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I realized, and it actually happened at the front desk. This was the thing that carried through my career, was so much of my success depended on getting work done through other people, and that lesson. I mean, at the front desk, you've got to have a great relationship with housekeeping, and you can't be bombarding them with rushing rooms all the time. And, all of the love hate that happens between those two departments is very real. And that lesson stuck with me as I moved through the ranks, eventually took on leadership positions and moved on in my career. It's the successful operation of a hotel is dependent on many people coming together and playing small parts. And it emerges as this hopefully seamless experience. But that was one of the things that stuck with me early days.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's cool. It's cool to see, over the course of your career. And I might not even thought twice about it until I was going to write the book. And you think about some of the people that you cross paths with. And, I'll talk about in there a manager that was like, some of these people have these genes that, and it's how you're raised. That it'll be like a manager I had that was like the calmest person on the face of this earth. Even when, you have everybody and their mother coming in here yelling at you for whatever you did wrong or whatever the housekeeper did wrong. And you kind of learn from them. You're like, man, how do you keep such a calm demeanor with these guests, and you kind of you take a little bit from everybody that you work with and kind of try to piece it all together to become, the perfect hotel person. But it's cool. It's fun. It's, like I said, everybody's personable, but I think a lot of it is just your upbringing, but working in hotels and watching other successful people helps.
When you moved up through your career, did you go into what else, kind of air quote around different caliber hotels? So you started at one type of hotel and maybe moved up different tiers.
Yeah. So I remember for a while there, my little description in LinkedIn was pretty much bragging about that. And I actually talk about that in the book too, is, I had to make me hopping around look as good as I possibly could, because at the end of the day, you're looking at my resume, like, this dude's been at 10 hotels in 4 years. Like, what is going on? Is he horrible, or does he just have a problem? And so I had to shift my bouncing into some sort of good way. And I remember it was like, I've worked at a resort hotel. I've worked at a city hotel. I've worked in a, rural hotel.
Mhm.
I've worked in new hotels. I've had to open a hotel. I had to close a hotel. I've worked in like luxury boutique hotels, and then not so luxury boutique hotels, and then also, your run of the mill hotel. So I learned to, and then full service, select service. I learned to kind of script my bouncing into a
Diverse
way that it,
experience.
yeah, sounded a lot better than it was. And even position, I had to,
Yeah.
at one point I went from front desk agent and literally on my own took a position as a, valet attendant, it was valet slash bellman slash concierge. So however you want to spin that.
Mhm.
But I took the position knowing that I was kind of formulating that hotel experience. I said, hey, if I'm growing in this industry, guess what? I haven't been valet. I haven't been a bellman. I haven't been in concierge, even though you do a lot of the concierge at the front desk at the hotels I had been at. But I said, you know what? It's okay. I mean, I was going to get paid the same and a little bit more anyway. So I said, let's do it. So, kind of just built that, that experience, and no one necessarily has to know, that I was at the desk before I was a bellman, or at the desk before I was valet attendant. All they're going to know is valet, bellman, concierge, front desk manager, etc. But, so, you got to spin it how you got to spin it. But yeah, there's a wide variety of places and tiers of hotels I was at. And that's kind of what, I had been to enough to the point where I was like, okay, like there's clearly a trend. Not to mention sales offices. I had been in the corporate side of hotels, which that's a whole nother ball game, but it's, you still see it over there. You wouldn't think you would, you're like, oh, I'm finally out of a physical hotel. So everything's got to be green on this side, Monday through Friday. Amazing. But nope, it's still the hotel business. So you're
totally
gonna get,
is.
you're going to get the same stuff.
It's all the same. It doesn't matter if you're on property or you're in a home office. It's the same stuff. For
exactly.
Sure.
And then not to mention franchise and non-franchise as well. So
you eventually moved into hotel sales.
Yep.
I feel like if anybody who's been in hospitality for a certain amount of time, if you don't go the HR or accounting route, you almost always start in some sort of operations position. And you hit a fork in the road and you decide, okay, I'm going to stay in operations or I'm going to go down the sales road. Did the same thing happen to you? And if it did, like, what was the thing that made you decide, I'm done with ops, I got to go this direction now?
Yeah. So I was probably in my mid-20s, I want to say. And, I was actually, I had worked as a supervisor at a property and had the unfortunate incident of the hotel shutting down. So within the matter of, weeks, I was like, man, I need to get another hotel job like quick. And it was at a time where there really wasn't much open. So I ended up jumping into a agent position again, which wasn't ideal. But at that point, I'd worked there. I knew I could do my 6 months and move along. So I was like, whatever, get in with a good company, 6 months, and then I can move up again or go whatever route. And it happened to be with the big company. It was Marriott. And I don't think I actually even touched on this in the book, but I think I mentioned in our previous podcast I did. It's interesting because, you can work in a hotel and not necessarily even know that other positions are out there other than the ones that you know of at the hotel. You might only think it's front desk, your management team, housekeeping, engineer. You might think that's it. You might not even know there's a sales department or revenue or accounting behind the scenes. And the only reason sales had even sparked my interest was because we had gotten a new general manager who was of, a zillion years of sales experience. He had come as a director of sales to our hotel because I really needed to bring in some sales to our property. And he just had a completely different mindset that I was used to seeing, on the operations side, super OCD with certain things and obviously with numbers and then bringing people into the hotel. But even as far as, your uniform and the little pins lined up on the computer correctly and just everything. And it reminded me a lot of me, and I hadn't really seen it yet. So I sparked a little interest in that side of things, and just kind of in talking to him. And then we had a little salesperson at our property that I had never really even thought twice about. I was like, man, I said, that might be a pretty cool gig, to get into sales, because it's a Monday through Friday thing. I'm not going to be physically at a property anymore, because this was a new property. And I was learning that even a brand new property was not a perfect property, which I thought, oh, brand new property, nothing can go wrong here. Well, yeah, it has its fair share of problem. Yeah, I mean, there's a club next door, there was a security desk downstairs that everybody complained because it seemed sketchy. There's everything. So there was a train that went by our hotel, so nobody wanted those rooms, of course. And so I was like, interesting. This could work. And so then in researching some of the positions, there was a sales office pretty close by to that hotel, probably about 30 minutes away. And researched the job site a little bit, saw the sales assistant positions, which was cool because then you could pretty much go from a front desk agent to that department without necessarily having anything else. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, this could possibly work. And I applied for about 8,000 different sales assistant positions that little did I know probably wasn't the greatest idea, because they do see that you apply for every position. So when I apply for 20 positions and I'm not getting them, that's probably not a good idea. But ended up getting one. Months later, I finally got the call. And it was cool that I went that route, but it also kind of depressed me a little bit because, I had already been working in hotels for probably 5 years, at least at that point. And I bounced around all these hotels, and I pretty much kind of floated around front desk supervisor, front desk manager, little concierge. And I was like, man, I literally could have graduated college and gone straight into this sales assistant role.
Right.
And had that Monday through Friday, getting paid a tiny bit better than any of the guest service positions that I had. Mm-hmm. But it was a cool decision, but also a little bit depressing, and kind of opened my eyes to. I think the love-hate with hotels might have been a little more love had I had been a little more familiar with some of the paths I could have taken along the way. Mm-hmm. And then maybe that would win the argument for the people that say, should you go to hospitality school? Because I'm sure in hospitality school, you're going to learn what ropes you can take. So then I wouldn't have wasted 5 years in the hotel industry doing front desk, Right. So, but, you live and you learn. And operations, I don't know. I know this is going to sound bad, but I don't know if anybody really is like dreaming of being in operations. I think it's just a matter of it's kind of the easier step to take in the property, because you can just go to the supervisor, manager, director. Right. I don't know if anybody says, man, I want to be a director of food and beverage and work every single weekend of my life, every night. Like, I just can't wait to do that and not be able to have dinner with my family. That's my dream job. I don't know if that's
you true. Just end up being in it for long enough where you're like, well, that's the next step. What else am I going to go do? You kind of move up the ladder, make a little bit more money. Have far more put on your plate, bring a side plate over and we're going to fill that one up too. Yeah. And that's kind of the way that it goes all the way up the ladder.
Well, and if you want to be GM, realistically, there's a couple ways obviously to become GM, but I know people that, they moved up, they did exactly that. Supervisor, manager, director, or maybe not even director, just went straight to GM. And that's you can obviously do a zillion different routes in the hotel industry, but sometimes that's the one that people choose to take, operations. But I think if I were to go back in time, I would have hopped in sales way sooner in the game. So.
Yeah. What do you think from your experience, the people that you've interacted with, putting the book together, what's the thing about hotels that maybe that you love and that you hate? What's the push and pull there?
So the number one, oh man, that's a tough one there. I would say it's a more accumulation of some things, but I would just have to say it has to be like more or less the inner workings of hotels. That was more of the frustrating part. The love part was obviously, dealing with new guests every day, meeting new people every day, something different every day, hanging out with the awesome people in the hotel industry. Everybody's pretty cool. But then as far as the inner workings, I mean, like, the pay is just kind of sad. The benefits, yeah, they kind of wave some benefits in front of you, but they aren't really that great. I mean, it's a lot of, um, hotel discounts, but if you're working on these crazy hours anyway and not getting paid a lot, you're really not going to take advantage of these discounts. Some of the computer systems that just were so far behind in technology, it's just like depressing. And, it's just accumulation of little things here and there. But, again, I mean, I think I would have a different appreciation of the love-hate had, let's say, maybe I had not even gone to college and hopped into hotels and climbed the ladder and making a ton of money and boom, great. But I think coming from somebody who went to 4 years of a good university and then stumbled in and kind of peeked your way up the ladder a little bit, I just don't know if it's something that people would do. But I go through at the end of the book that basically, on the first book that says, I talk about all these things that I don't necessarily like in hotels. So why on earth do I still work in them? And it kind of goes through a couple things. And then it also, and then I also have a little section at the very end that says, if I were to basically rewind in time and do things different, how would I have done it? And then I even talk about, if I had stayed in real estate, had I had started doing, actually the restaurant industry I worked in for like a tiny period of time, but, and then the hotel industry, just what I would have done a little bit different. So it's a combination of things. I don't know if there's one particular thing that's like, I mean, the one thing I would think that you have to, and we kind of touched on a little bit earlier, that's the love is just the fact that you can literally work wherever you want. I mean, once you've worked front desk somewhere, there's no saying you can't work front desk anywhere unless you don't speak the language of wherever you want to work. I mean, obviously you're going to run into some difficulties there. I'd looked at working in Mexico at a hotel, like, man, that would be awesome, but I don't speak Spanish. So realistically, I wouldn't even apply for a job just because I don't think I have a chance.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it's very flexible as far as what you can do and where you can go, as long as you're willing to make that sacrifice. And again, this is coming from somebody who was single for a long time. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have a dog. I didn't mind leaving my family and paying my own rent and my own bills. A lot of people, stay with their parents for a long time and then kind of soak up that money while they can. They want to buy a house in their hometown and have their dog and their dream little family. And so it might not be in the cards for them to do that. So, but for me and anyone else who was in that situation, there's a lot of space to move and grow.
I can relate. Absolutely. Did the same thing. I heard a few years ago, I heard a saying, team building through shared pain and misery.
Yeah.
it just resonated with me because that's exactly what it's like sometimes. You develop these strong bonds with people because you go through difficult things together. You deal with difficult situations. And I mean, I'm sure you're the same. I've got relationships with people that I worked with 20 years ago in hotels, and we still keep in touch today. And, some of them got out, some of them, like myself, stayed in. But you still have those shared experiences. It's that, and I agree with you. That's probably the thing that keeps most people in it. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and you said it right there. One of the biggest loves is just the connections that you do make. I mean, it's an amazing job for networking. As far as not only career but just your life in general. I mean, for the most part, everybody that I worked with, I'm still cool with. I mean, I'm a text or Instagram message away from everybody. I mean, there might be one or two managers that maybe not so much, but even some of the ones that I didn't necessarily hit it off with. I mean, I would still, and I say that in the book too, I would still, there's a couple managers that I wasn't big fans of, and they might not have been big fans of me, but we would still grab a beer, if I was in their city. Nowadays I'd hit them up, be like, hey, what are you doing? Let's go grab a drink and kind of
just catch up,
brush some of those things off. Yeah.
I'm curious to get your take on experience versus education
Mm-hmm.
in hospitality. And you alluded to it earlier about going to school and walking in with a 4-year degree. And this is something that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about and talking with a few different people on. Is we've got this pandemic right now, and there's hundreds of hotel programs across the country, thousands around the world. There's tens of thousands of kids in these programs that either just graduated this year or are, maybe next year, the next 2 years, going to graduate or coming out of high school thinking about going into a hotel program.
Yeah.
What's your view on this? Is there value in hospitality education? And you've got the benefit of hindsight now, right? Looking back and seeing how the industry has changed. What are you thinking there?
Okay, so that is a tough one, but so I didn't go to hospitality school, so I can't sit here and say it's necessarily worth it or not worth it just because I can't say I have the 4 years of experience of being in it. Will it help? Sure, of course it'll help. Is it needed? I don't know. I think it just depends what you want to do. I mean, if you're going to be an accountant in a hotel, do you really need a hotel management degree? No, you just get an accounting degree. What I would suggest is probably get I was going to say a legitimate degree, but wow, that sounded bad. Get a more generalized degree, and then maybe get a
traditional
minor. Yeah, get maybe like a little minor, a couple certificates in hotels. I don't know if it's necessary to have a whole 4 year because you might, screw yourself in the long run if something like this happens. I mean, whoever would have expected this, but now, those people that have a hospitality degree and they only have worked in a hotel, let's say for 1 year out of school, where are they going to go? I mean, are they going to be able to get an accounting degree or any other degree that doesn't involve the word hotel or restaurant? So that would be my thing. And that was pre-pandemic. I was always a fan of another degree rather than hospitality. Now, I will say I'm also a little bit different on the opinion of going to college because, like I said, I did go to a 4-year school, pretty expensive one. So when I look back now, I don't even think I would have done that. I would have probably just done a little 2-year degree. And had I known I wanted to work in hospitality or hotel specifically, I would have started while I was either in high school or right out of high school while I was taking some college courses, because you can climb the ranks pretty quickly. Like I said, as long as you're a good people person, you do well, you learn quickly. A lot of these hotels have enough training courses on their own that you don't necessarily, need that 4-year backup. I mean, I think the 4 years is good. Just 4-year college in general is good just because you're living on your own for 4 years. I mean, I think that's pretty cool. Does it need to be hospitality? Personally, I don't think so. But again, like I said earlier in this podcast is, I would have learned the rankings in the hotel industry. Do I need a 4-year degree for that? What route to go in the hotel? No, I could have taken I probably could have watched a YouTube video on that, honestly, but
yeah.
But I didn't know, so and I do know that when I worked at a property in DC and it was, cool little cute little boutique-y, I guess luxury technically hotel, we had a couple interns that had come from Penn State University, and they had, I'm assuming the school had a pretty good hospitality program and a good connection, more or less, to these hotels, because we had quite a few people coming from that college to ours. I don't know what kind of connection they had. And they would do, the manager and training program at our hotel, which seemed pretty cool because basically they would start off as I guess they still called it a manager in trading of like the front desk. Then they would go to housekeeping. Then they would go to wherever. The kicker is I don't know if they were getting paid as a manager. I think pretty sure they were getting paid pretty similar to what we were getting paid at the front desk. So, again, kind of that typical hotel workaround, I guess you would say, where, they're doing management duties, but they're still getting paid as a front desk agent. And I just don't know how many. I would be curious to see the statistics as to how many people went into a management. Well, first of all, how many people can get into a management training program at a property? And then once they've gotten that management training experience, I guess, what jobs they got after that. And like, was it worthwhile? Was it worthwhile over just starting in hotels by yourself and then climbing your own ranks? Was there an advantage to one over the other? Because I don't know if it gets your foot in the door any quicker than other people. I'm not sure. I'd have to see some stats on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I know that the management and training programs are pretty big recruiting drives for hotels. Definitely some of the big companies. They go to the big hotel schools, at the beginning of the year, and will try to recruit some of the best workers at job fairs to come and join their management training programs, because they got to fill the bench for all of the people that, whether it's going to be attrition of managers because they leave the industry or they move on or they get transferred to other hotels. You need to keep feeding the system right. with new blood. And that's really, I would say probably 20 years ago, that's when these management training programs really started to gain traction, when you really start to see them in a lot of places. The experience versus education debate is in hotels. It's one of the only industries, I think, where that debate still exists. Yeah. Where if you want to have a successful career in a relatively high-paying position, you don't necessarily have to go to school.
Exactly.
It doesn't hurt. The difference, I think, over the last probably 10 years is that if you want to get into being a general manager, that's become, especially in some of the bigger hotels, it's become a very different ball game with institutional owners and private equity firms buying hotels. It's viewed more as a business than it is operating something with guests arriving and departing in a box that you just have to get through the day in. Suddenly you're making more reports, and it helps if you're a general manager and you can speak the language of the owners. And if they happen to be money guys or private equity guys, if you can relate to them on their level, then suddenly maybe you start talking about, does it make sense to get a master's degree? Like, that's when the conversation definitely shifts. But yeah, if you want to go up the ranks, for sure, you don't necessarily need to do it.
Yeah, and I would just probably, personally, if I knew I wanted to get into hotel sales, which I don't know if anybody knows that that's what they're going to get into, but, do a degree in marketing or sales instead of hotels.
Specialized. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then same thing with, even if you think you're going to become a general manager, I would almost think that maybe an accounting or finance degree would do better off, since you're going to be dealing with, budget and financing and everything else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's probably where I stand. But I mean, yeah, that could go back and forth. I mean, because, I just don't know. And this could be a whole other topic, but if, this day and age, would I ever go back, even pre-COVID, would I ever get into the hotel industry anyway, when, you could, create your own YouTube channel and, make $1 zillion for whatever the heck, dancing on TikTok or, right. It's just, I don't know if I'd go to school for 4 years to get out of school and be a front desk agent as a hotel, when there's quite a few other options out there. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you.
Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I've learned through just the Love Hate Hotels Instagram that, there's a lot of other cultures in the world that, the hotel industry is that's a popular thing, whereas, here in the USA, you're not bragging to your friend that you're a front desk agent at the Mandarin Oriental. Nobody cares, but if you're in, let's say you're in Malaysia somewhere and you're working at actually, I don't even know if there's a Mandarin there, but, if you're working there, then people are like, oh my God, this guy, he's awesome. The girls might think he's, super attractive because he works there. It's a total different, they definitely go to school for hospitality there, but that's also it's more normal there. I don't know if their pay necessarily reflects it, because I can tell you it doesn't in the US, but it seems like there it's more accepted. And I don't know if it's because a lot of those places tend to be tourist driven, but it definitely, I think it's region based, the experience and the schooling and everything else.
For sure. You talked about it a little bit earlier. Some of the cultural changes that needs to happen in hospitality, and the pandemic has definitely illuminated some of those elements, I think, that need to be addressed in the industry at large. What do you think? What's your opinion on what those fundamentals are that need to change, and how would we get there? How do we move the conversation forward from just complaining about it to actually making meaningful change and a difference as we come out of this pandemic?
Yes. So, I mean, you're talking about like things like I was talking about, like the low pay and the computer systems and such.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as far as the pay goes, I think really it needs to take a big hotel chain, one that people respect, to make the move. I mean, to say, okay, listen, from this point on, we're going to be paying agents that's the minimum. I mean, obviously it's different because every state and city might pay a little bit different, but they need to take the stand that they're going to pay their associates a wage that they can live off of. You can't, I don't care if you're a housekeeper or front desk agent, when you're making the minimum wage and nobody can live off of that, it is what it is. So, I always catch crap because I posted a couple of things on my Instagram for the CEO of Hilton saying something about how he doesn't tip housekeepers. Of course, the Hilton people are all going to hate me and they say I hate Hilton, but I worked for Hilton and I actually really liked working for them. But, regardless of which company it was, if you're a CEO of a hotel chain, you just, I don't even care if you don't tip housekeepers. Well, I care if you don't tip housekeepers, but if you don't tip housekeepers, you don't tell people that you don't tip housekeepers in that position, period. So that was my issue. I think he could have spun that into, that would have been the prime time. He could have said, you know what? You're right. Our housekeepers, they shouldn't have to rely on tips. They should be making enough, money so that it's not an issue. It shouldn't, because if people aren't tipping anymore, it shouldn't be a tipped position. Obviously a server position, a bartender position, a busser position at, let's say, hotel restaurants, like those are probably going to always be some sort of tip positions, at least for now. I know some countries are not, but you don't say a position like a housekeeping or even a front desk position. They, say, oh yeah, well, you get tips at the front desk. Well, not really. I mean, it kind of depends what hotel you're working at, but for the most part, not really. So you need to get that paid to a point where make it a profession, make the front desk a profession. That way people want to work the front desk. That way people want to go to hospitality school to become a front desk agent. Can you imagine if a front desk agent was making $60,000 a year? I mean, there might be, somewhere in the United States, but, actually a livable wage at the front desk and actually a salary. Can you imagine a salaried front desk agent instead of hourly? Actual legitimate benefits, actually get a week off a year, actually get your holidays and whatever else. I think that's what it's missing. And that's when you were asking me about what position I wanted to go to, making that transition to sales or operations. I think that swayed my opinion, because when I went to sales, it was technically seen as a corporate position. So the benefits were completely different. The hours are completely different. Like everything, it's like a whole different company I was in, even though it was the same company. But it's just that difference from the hotel, kind of seen as, a lower level, I guess you would say, associate, unless you're a general manager or the revenue manager or director or whatever. Everybody else is kind of seen as, just like whatever, you're replaceable. And I think if hotels can get away from that, and I don't know if pay is the only answer. I think you just have to make it a little bit more legitimate. And I think I talk about this in the book was, one of the things that would frustrates me, and this was at every hotel. I thought it was just one, and then it ended up being at every hotel. You have these associate meetings, whether it be for Christmas or just your all hands, quarterly, whatever. And you would have um, your awards, employee of the month or whatever award they want to come up with. But it would always be, kind of seen as like, okay, which lower level position person can we give this free 32-inch TV to? And it's like, and in every quarter you'd have these little meetings and you're like, oh, which housekeeper is going to get this blender this year? Which, busser is going to get this? And it was just kind of like, it just makes you feel like lower level, just really tacky.
Right.
It's hard to, you're just not seen as legitimate employees.
Right. It feels a little demeaning.
Yeah, demeaning. That's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
And then even hotels, I mean, I do think hotels see it as maybe team camaraderie or whatever, but a lot of these hotels, these major chains will call their, instead of calling them employees or associates, that come up with some cheesy, name to call them instead of that.
Yeah.
And I think it just it ends up coming across as more demeaning than it does. But why can't you just call us employees? That's what we are, and treat us like employees instead of calling us hosts or all-stars or whatever the heck. What did Starwood, I think, used to call their employees something really crazy, but I can't remember.
Oh, I don't remember.
I think Marriott is still hosts. They call them hosts.
Yeah.
Hilton, I can't remember what Hilton's was either, but it's just these little tacky workarounds.
The intentions might be good, but it just doesn't. It falls flat.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe it wouldn't fall flat if the technology was up to speed, if the pay was up to speed, if people's schedules came out, earlier than a day before the schedule starts, just little things. I think it wouldn't be that big of a deal, but I think just legitimizing the hotels to make it so that people want to be there, want to have a career in hotels, and not have to worry about, am I going to have to find a new job because now I'm only getting a couple hours a week, and it's just there's a lot of little things, but I think it has to start with the pay and the babying of front desk agents. Because if you go to college for 4 years and you come out a front desk agent, you've been living by yourself for 4 years, and then you come in and get babied as this, $10 an hour front desk agent. They're giving you a little blender at Christmas parties. It's like, I don't know. I don't see it encouraging people to stay in that field.
Mm-hmm. You said earlier, the everybody's replaceable mentality in hospitality. And, the irony is that I've been worked in a few cities now where we couldn't find workers. We were in like San Francisco, couldn't find anybody to work. There's a ton of hotels there, and everybody who does those, what would be entry level or frontline jobs, don't live anywhere near where the hotel is in downtown San Francisco or downtown, pick your big city, right? And so they live further out, and there's that much more competition out there in the areas where a lot of the workers live, that they could drive 5 or 10 minutes down the street and get a job and get paid probably a similar amount as they would have to drive an hour and a half into downtown San Francisco and deal with all of the stuff down there in that city in particular. But it strikes me that one of the elements that has to change as we come out of this is the empathy factor in leading teams, and understanding that everybody comes into work with a story, different needs, and they're trying to get something out of the job that they have, and they've applied to work at your property to achieve all of the life goals that everybody wants to achieve, and they're hoping to be able to do that through the property that they've chosen to put their application in. And it could be several, but the one that they ended up getting hired at, that's the ultimate goal. And that empathetic leadership, that understanding of people's needs, and trying to marry the two with the business needs of the property, that's that's where the hard work has to happen as we come out of this. I think the hotels that do that really well are going to be the ones that succeed going forward.
Yeah, you said it perfect too, because the hard part with hotels, everybody coming together is, and if you don't work in the hotel industry, you might even know this, but every Marriott hotel is not owned by Marriott International. Every Hilton hotel is not. Actually, Hilton's a little weirder, but each property has their own ownership group or management
Right.
group. Yeah, it might be one of the few properties that Marriott does own and manage, but and then if you are, like, let's say a franchise manager, franchise Marriott property, you still have to follow the rules to still carry the Marriott flag, etc. But as far as like pay scale and stuff like that, none of that it falls under that checklist that a hotel has to follow to carry a Marriott flag, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I learned when I was working in hotel staffing, and it wasn't until then when I really opened my eyes and saw this, was basically I was doing sales for a staffing company, and we would assist hotels with, housekeepers, bussers, a lot of the kind of those type of positions, sometimes front desk agents, but more or less some of the hourly that could technically be temporary positions, banquet staff. And I would talk to just to throw out random brands, not to necessarily call anybody out, but I would talk to a Courtyard Marriott, on Miami Beach. More parking is more expensive. It's a little more expensive to be there, and they would pay their housekeepers, let's say, $10 an hour, or let's say $12 an hour. They pay their housekeepers $12 an hour, which definitely wasn't. It was lower, but we'll say $12 an hour. And that no free parking, so our associates would have to find their way to get there, because obviously they weren't living on the beach, like you were saying. They had to live outside the beach and get their public transportation to the hotel to work, obviously taking them forever to get to work, then finally getting to work. No associate meals, just pretty much going to work, $12 an hour. That's it. That's a wrap.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would have a St. Regis, up the street. That was, guess what they were paying per hour? $11 an hour.
I was going to say 12, but they're less.
and they might have had an employee meal or some sort of little extra perk, but still no parking, but still on the beach, nothing. So it was like, wait a second, what on earth? Like, this Courtyard is charging $200 a night for their guests. The St. Regis is charging $1,000 a night for their guests, and you're telling me the housekeepers are going to get paid the same, if not less, at the St. Regis? Like, and they're obviously held to a higher standard. Like, I can't send somebody to work at the St. Regis when they have a tattoo on their neck or facial hair or
right.
Ear piercing or whatever else. So it was super eye-opening. I mean, and sadly I had to like educate these hotels. I say, listen, this other property we have right here is paying this, giving them parking, giving them a meal, they're giving them this. What's going on here? And they're like, well, no, we can get anybody here. Like, it's not an issue. Obviously not, or else they weren't using a staffing company. That's probably why they were trying to use us. But it's just, it was interesting to see that it really didn't matter what the brand, what the tier of the property, there was just no consistency. And again, two completely separate ownership groups, I'm sure that in those hotels, so they don't know, but they do see the market. You can, super easy to go on these job sites and figure out what the average pay rate is for a lot of these positions. So you can see it, and it's just, it's crazy. It's crazy, and I know other industries aren't necessarily like that. I mean, obviously there's underpaid industries, but as far as like so much of the inconsistency, it's pretty crazy.
It is. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. That's just one of the things that needs to get addressed as we come out of this. Hey, Tony, before we wrap the show, what would be the takeaway that you hope readers of your two books get? What's the ultimate message you're trying to get out there?
Yeah, I would probably just say do your research first before you get into not only hotels, but any career. I mean, obviously my hotel's driven towards people, hospitality, hotel related. But I think it's probably the same with any job. You're going to have your loves and your hates. So before you get into it, do a little research, find out if maybe schooling is needed or not needed, or or maybe an alternative route of schooling. You know, just research. I'd say research is the number one thing. But also, no matter what job you're going to choose, unless you're, Elon Musk and you can send rockets, to the moon or whatever, you have to remember that a job is a job at the end of the day. And yes, you can love your job, of course, but at the end of the day is a job. So you're always going to take away little things that you hate from it. And, and try to adjust the best that you can. And luckily with, the pandemic, I think that it has enabled a lot of people to kind of take a step back and reevaluate their career choices and realize that we are luckily in an age of technology where, you can go to school online pretty easily. I mean, realistically, you don't have to go to school online. You can YouTube school online or udemy.com or any of these other cheap education sites and kind of choose your own path and go from there. But yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily want people to hate the hotel industry. That's not my end goal, but obviously because there's a love in my title as well. But I would just say, be cautious with it. And, it's fun to vent about it. Don't be afraid to share your love, but share your hate too and laugh about it. I know some people get really upset when I post, certain things, but at the end of the day, it's just all fun and games. I mean, like I said, I've worked for a zillion different brands and properties and ownership groups and positions. So I just laugh about it now and hopefully grow. And I am now in a career where I'm still kind of in the industry, but I have better hours, less hours, make more money, so you kind of have to take.
So it can be done.
It can be done. You can. Well, hey, I'm not dead yet, so I don't know if you can fully escape before you hit the grave, but and you don't necessarily have to if you enjoy it, but yeah.
Love it. Hey, Tony, this was great, man. I appreciate you coming on and talking about the book and your career and your story. It was great to have you on. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, where can they go?
Yeah, so mainly the Instagram, just at Love Hate Hotels. And then I was doing a little hotel recruiting on the side, but that's obviously taking a little step back due to COVID. But yeah, I mean, I mainly post and link everything there. So if you go to at Love Hate Hotels, you'll see the links for the book, the Instagram, the Twitter. There's a little shop for a couple funny little hotel items. And yeah, that's where you want to head.
Instagram it is. I'll link to it in the show notes. Everybody can find it right there. Perfect.
Sounds good.
All right, Tony. Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
This was my episode with Tony Matthews, author of Love Hate Hotels. You can find Tony on Instagram at Love Hate Hotels, and don't forget to grab his book on Amazon. I'll link to his profile in the show notes. To see the full interview, just search the Proven Principles podcast on YouTube, and you can learn more about the show and find past episodes on our website, theprovenprinciplespodcast.com. The show is produced by Knowing Hospitality, a full-service hotel management and consulting company. Head over to knowinghospitality.com to learn more. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.
For past episodes, show notes, or if you've got a story that might make a great episode, head on over to theprovenprinciplespodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, even on YouTube. And if you haven't already, don't forget to leave us a rating and a review. Thanks for listening to the Proven Principles Podcast.